Before we get started, if you missed any of our episodes, you can always head over to kfoxtv.com/community/the-breakdown. Now let's break it down. Hi guys, I'm Brad Montgomery and welcome to The Breakdown. And here we talk about science, psychology, and finance. Today, we're going to be talking about sleep and wellness and how it affects you, part 2. If you're listening to part 1, you definitely want to check out part 2 as we're going to go a little bit deeper into this subject. And I'm back with Dr. Omavi, and that was such a really deep and robust topic. Sleep and wellness, just how your daily routines, which you may not be realizing, may be hurting you, how to, little hints and tricks to kind of improve those routines, because sleep is so important to the healing of our body. And that's one thing that you were talking about. I do want to, before we dive into part 2, I just want to recenter really quickly. What was kind of your definition, or how do you look at chronic sleep deprivation? Like, what is it and how do you approach it? And then we'll move in from there.
Okay. Very good question. So sleep for me is our natural biological time to heal. Okay. And it's not just physical healing, but it's healing of the mind and the body at least. And fundamentally, it's a recovery and a repair process. And it's a totally different state of consciousness that we've been able to measure. We know it's a different state from wake to sleep. And then even within sleep, there's stages. So it's defined as a unique state of consciousness and an optimal time to heal and recover.
And I remember when we were talking about that before, I remember thinking, okay, I want to pay attention and I'm going to go back and listen to that podcast because one, it is so important for our bodies to be able to heal. And number 2, there were some hints and tricks that you can do to kind of relax yourself and get your body ready as you go into that process. And also, I think it's just I want to get this out there, a very important topic and subject, because I think a lot of people have bad sleep habits and they don't know it.
True.
You're just kind of riding along and you're like, why do I not feel great? Oh, the last 3 years you haven't really been sleeping that great, or possibly longer.
Exactly.
So I want to also talk about, we've talked about how it's important for repairing your body and essentially your mind as well. And obviously I see how calm and relaxed you are. And this is some other people. I see how calm and relaxed they are. And I'm like, what's the secret? So, and I know there's a lot of secrets, but I know this is one of them. Okay. So, but how can it also affect cognitive function, such as memory, decision-making, problem solving?
Definitely. First of all, you said something very interesting. A lot of people don't know they have bad sleep. And it's true. It's really hard to know how you sleep, but there were some studies that showed when you ask the priority of what's important to people who do have bad sleep, it's not so much getting more sleep, it's how they feel the next day.
Right.
Being able to perform at a certain level. And I think we're in a very performance-driven society.
Yeah.
So when you talk about mental acuity, recall, and also psychomotor vigilance, being able to have physical actions and learn new physical tasks. If it's in sports or if it's in, even a physical job that you may have, it's super important. For example, there have been studies that shown in one night of sleep deprivation, you can impair your driving the next day.
Oh, yeah.
So it increases risk of car accidents, and that could be 18-wheelers. That can be, people who are delivering or even police officers or other first responders. And it's really important. So
we want those UPS drivers to get plenty of sleep.
They need, I had a UPS driver as a patient yesterday. So seriously. So essentially, it's super important. The recovery of the mind, learning new tasks, being sharp mentally, response time when there are things that are, especially if you're in a position that's dangerous, or you're working in a facility, or you maybe are an officer, things can happen really quick. And if you're not well rested, your mental acuity and your decision making can be impacted.
And one thing you said, that was a couple of things that you said that are very interesting. And one, you kind of pointed out something I said where, that's one thing we really can't watch ourselves sleep.
Exactly.
We don't have this out of body experience and be like, oh yeah, that was really bad. But, and the other thing that you said was important is something that we can all kind of relate to in the shorter term. It can affect you if you've had a terrible night's sleep, for example, or just not enough. It can affect you in a pretty dramatic way the next day. And I know a lot of people can relate where we've had a bad night's sleep and you either catch yourself making bad judgment calls the next day, or the day after when you're well rested, you're like, why in the world did I do that? And then
Right.
you're like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep the night before.
Right. I mean, you've probably heard your grandmother or someone say, just sleep on it before you make that decision.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not tired when you make that decision. It's true. Decision making, and it's really executive function. That's your frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex of your brain. Mm-hmm. Executive functioning, when you're making high level decisions that require analysis, it requires you to be rested and prepared. Otherwise, you're likely to make the wrong decision. And it's just that simple. There's also patterns that can be seen in shopping.
Okay.
Where people who are up late at night, they're scrolling, they're getting advertised, they're buying stuff. They're like, man, I bought that stuff. Why'd I even buy this? The wrong size, or I bought the wrong one. So I mean,
affects your decision.
Your decision making is
sure.
being impacted, and that's why they market that at that time. They understand exactly who's up and what they're looking for. So yeah, it's super important to get that rest.
And a quick question, because for me, like, I don't have. I'm usually pretty easygoing person. The only exception is if I don't get enough sleep.
Understood. Mood and
my daughter's mom always noticed that. Like, yeah, he's a nice guy, but he doesn't get enough sleep. But which is pretty easy to fix. But why is that also an effector of the mood? Why is that?
It's a lot. Essentially, there are times in your sleep where you're actually processing and healing, trauma. Mm-hmm. You're actually processing and going through your stress and anxiety. And it's just very simple to understand that you're tired. Mm-hmm. So the neurotransmitters that help you relax, serotonin, they're not there.
Right.
They're not there. They're not available. And so you're actually doing something at a time when you actually are not ready to do it. Okay. You're not ready. Right. And if you've ever had to do something you weren't ready to do, it's very uncomfortable.
Right. It is, yeah.
So it's about readiness as well. So I definitely think, but it impacts relationships. And this is where I actually see people, they come in because their relationships are suffering. Mm-hmm. And I ask all my patients, I say, okay, I understand now you're here. You come to see me because you have a sleep problem or someone told you did. How's your relationship? You have to ask about personal relationships because they care about that. Right. You're invested. Right. You may not care about your health or your blood pressure, but your divorce or your separation or your marriage is going to wake you up. So that's the point where I see a lot of people, and invariably we can impact relationships based on how we sleep. Yeah. And culturally, sleeping is an intimate thing. You sleep with people typically. Mm-hmm. You're vulnerable. You share space, etc. And if both people are not sleeping well, it does impact the relationship.
And it's interesting because if you got luckily for me, the couple of relationships that my daughter's mom most recently, a couple I had where you lived together, they were deep sleepers. Mm-hmm. And my daughter's mom was a deep sleeper, and I was glad because I would snore, but she wouldn't. I mean, she was out.
She was out.
I mean, and she would even say, once I go to sleep, like nothing would wake me up. Like someone could break in the house. She's like, I'd have no idea.
Yep.
And I'm like a medium deep sleeper.
Okay.
But it is interesting but if you don't have that, if it doesn't work out that way, let's say one is a medium and light sleeper and one's a heavy snorer. Well, he's not getting good sleep and she's not getting good sleep.
Let me say this because I've thought about this. I think it's actually important when you're dating to ask about how do you sleep. Ask your partner or your person of interest. Right. How do you sleep? Because that's a compatibility thing.
That is.
It really is super important because if you're a loud snorer, another person has insomnia, you're going to have a problem.
That is not good. Yeah,
you're going to have a problem.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
And honestly, it will tell you a lot about how your relationship is going to be down the line, the longevity of it, even their health issues that you may see, both mental and physical health issues you may find later on in your relationship. Dementia so stage 3 sleep, which is your deep sleep, slow wave sleep, is when your brain is being washed and cleansed of all the little plaques and tangles that cause dementia later on in life. And so if you're not getting that stage of sleep, you're increasing your likelihood of developing dementia. And that is a serious thing to deal with later on in life if you're married, especially now you're taking care of someone you love because they're entering a stage of dementia, So those are things you're going to want to know.
Yeah, that is so that, and you don't want to keep somebody awake. And I never thought about the health problems down the line.
Yeah.
Especially now they're talking about more cases of like early onset.
Early onset, I'm
dementia.
telling you, and they're related to sleep. Stage 3 sleep. It's critical.
Now, stage 3, if I could ask you, because for people that are out there, I know a lot of people are familiar with REM sleep.
Right.
Right. I think there's like non-REM, which leads up to
Right.
REM period, and
Right.
REM is you're dreaming and you're in your deepest period.
Right.
I know you've got a bunch of different categories because you study this. So
Okay.
so where does stage 3?
It's
fall?
not that complex. Let me break it down.
Okay.
You're right. You have wake,
Okay.
non-REM, and REM.
Okay.
Those are the 3 different states of consciousness. Now, non-REM has stage 1, 2, and 3. It used to be 4 stages. They consolidated 3 and 4 into just 3.
Okay.
All right. So non-REM sleep is your light sleep, your drowsiness light sleep, and your deep sleep. The stage 3 is the slow wave sleep. That's when you're trying to wake someone up and they're not budging.
Okay.
They're not waking up at all.
Wow.
REM sleep, very interestingly, is actually your brain waves are almost identical to being awake.
Okay. Really?
Super active.
Oh.
Super active.
Is it because you're dreaming?
You're
Your mind's
dreaming.
going? Okay.
You're dreaming. The only reason you're not acting out what you're experiencing is because your body's paralyzed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and because your body's paralyzed, the sleep apnea is usually worse because your muscle tone is absent.
And you can't respond.
You can't respond, and your muscles are all relaxed, so your airway's collapsing. So, REM sleep is just this phenomenon we're still trying to understand. Why do we do it? Why is it necessary? Why, when you miss it and you finally get some sleep, it rebounds. It comes back more. Like you need it. We know it's necessary.
Oh.
So it's super important. So that REM sleep is a different state of consciousness. Your body, it's a physiological state as well that's unique. Different, your blood pressure changes, your heart rate, everything is different in your physiology. Your body's repairing things. You're fighting cancer cells. Like, it's things that only happen during certain stages of sleep.
So you need that.
You need it. Then we could talk about dreaming, which is a whole nother phenomenon.
So, and that was actually the next question. I just happened to glance down, and it's funny because it's what I wanted to ask: what role does dreaming play?
Yeah.
In not just like a helping to heal your body, because maybe if your body's in a more relaxed state, in a happy state, dream versus a nightmare, for example, maybe you're likely to be more able to repair itself just because you're more at ease. Okay. But I want to know what effect dreaming has on your mental health. Like, because for me, and it's very weird, I just want to start off with this, and I know you've been there too. It's like, there's been nights where we've had bad dreams. And when we wake up, we're like, man, I'm glad to be awake. That's the happiest 7 o'clock in the morning alarm I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where the dreams were so good, you're almost sad to leave them, but you feel so good. And I've heard people say that one of the indicators of having like a good, emotionally healthy day is, how did you dream the night before? What's up with that?
We really have to understand that if you sleep 8 hours a day and you live 60 years, you've slept 20 years.
Oh, wow.
We have to put it in context. 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
All right. And then about 20 to 25% of that, so another 4 or 5 years, is actually dreaming.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So it's a big, big learning opportunity.
Okay.
Like, you can learn a lot from dreams, and and there's also this automatic healing process that's happening. So things are being dealt with, deep repressed emotions, feelings, and people ask me, why don't I remember my dreams? You may not want to remember all of it, but it's working on something. It is a state, something's happening, right? So there's a lot of different theories about why we dream, what's the importance of dreams. We know it's necessary. We know it's important for our health. The other thing I'll see in my clinical practice, I look at it the other way around. Why don't you dream? What does that mean about you and your mental health and your physical health potentially, that you don't dream? And I get someone's sleep study and say, wow, you got 2% REM sleep. What's going on?
Oh, interesting.
Let's understand your sleep architecture's off. You're not giving yourself an opportunity to heal and reach these different states of consciousness, right? So that tells me a lot about them. They'll start asking questions that, when did this start? Have you lost a loved one? Losing a loved one is invariably a common denominator. And it goes 2 ways. People's sleep change, like dramatically, instantly. Or their sleep and dreams become a key for their connection to that loved one. They have that dream, that first dream after they've lost them, where they see them again, and it becomes an important thing for them. to dream again.
So they try to get back to,
They try to get back
that spot, of
Yes,
course. Yeah, you
yes,
want
because
to.
you don't have that same filter, that conscious filter where you can say, oh no,
That's not real.
that's not real.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be flying, you can be in different times, you can be in the
Right.
future, you can be in the past, and that's healthy. All right, so it's ancient.
Right.
We're dreaming even when we're in utero.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
old.
there's only been like a couple of times, and it was way back when I was in my early 20s, and we had just moved to a new place, and I missed my friends in the old place, and I remember there were about 2 nights maybe where I controlled my dreams, but I'd never been able to do it again.
Yeah.
I was going back with my friends at night, like in my dream, but I literally, there was one night I had the best dream, and I'm like, I'm doing that again. And I went into it, and I fell asleep, and I did it again.
Right.
But I was not able to do it a third or fourth or fifth time.
It's a practice.
Okay.
It's a
You can
practice.
actually, some people do that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a practice. I mean, I tell people dreaming is like, and sleep is like, meditation and deep breathing. If you look at someone, how relaxed, you look at a child.
Right.
They're sleeping. They look so relaxed.
Yeah.
They're like completely somewhere else, but they're experiencing something. Their eyes are moving. They can have different motions that they have. It's interesting. We are part of nature.
Right.
We're not the only ones who dream in nature.
You see dogs do it.
Yeah. Animals dream too.
Yeah.
So I think when we tap into that and when we use it as a practice, it can be very healthy. It can be very healthy.
And okay, so it is, and as we've seen, it's important, obviously important piece of mental health. And you said you can actually, just to circle back real quick, which I found was interesting, the fact that you can actually see and record when people are dreaming because it's represented within that REM sleep. That is super fascinating.
We can measure it. We can measure that. We know when they're in that state, but not just that. I mean, there's some basic things that we need to talk about.
Okay.
Men will have circulation and blood flow to their sex organs during REM sleep.
Okay.
As a young man, you remember you had a dream, you woke up with an erection, right?
Exactly.
But that is REM sleep, as I mentioned, is when sleep apnea is at its worst.
Okay.
So sleep apnea could be interrupting the REM sleep. They're not getting that circulation. It affects their testosterone and it causes erectile dysfunction. So when we treat the sleep apnea, they get that REM sleep back. And they also get that erectile function back. So it's an important thing for men to get REM sleep.
So watch for that lack of erection in the morning. And then also watch for maybe if you've come up, maybe you've always been a dreamer, not for the cliche, but you always have been during sleep, and then you're coming up into your 30s and 40s and you're not dreaming as much. That could be a sign.
A sign, exactly.
Wow. That's interesting.
When's the last time you had a good dream or you had a dream? Or if your dreams are super violent, like you feel like you're drowning or you're choking or someone's chasing, that could be you're actually choking in real life, and it's imposing itself on your dream.
The airways.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing happens. Dream states can be imposed on wakefulness. So there are patients who are asleep and they get out of bed and they walk. I have a patient walks out his front door, walked into his neighbor's house. Patients who've woken up in the alley or who've fallen down the steps, gone out the front door, got in the car, went to drive through. How did I get here? Where's this food coming from? Eating in their sleep. So there are a lot of phenomenon that exist, and we call them parasomnias, like paranormal activity of sleep, and they are real. We're still learning about them, but they exist and they've existed for a long time.
I've done a little bit of that. Now I'll tell you but I stopped it. So there was a period of time in my probably late 20s where it wasn't anything big, but I would get thirsty at night, and I would just get up and go get a drink of water. But over, I don't know, a period of months, I realized that I was doing it like in my sleep. And so I stopped because I didn't want it to develop into anything bad, or I didn't want it to, maybe I wanted to get a drink of water, but then I remembered, hey, did I turn the light off in the garage? So I actually stopped. I would make sure I was plenty hydrated before I went to bed.
Right.
And then now it's not. It's a little bit less of an issue. If I wake up at night, I go to the bathroom or whatever. I make sure I'm awake. I'll maybe get a drink of water then or whatever. But just going to get a drink of water, there would over time it had become where I wouldn't even fully be awake. And so I said, no, You know, I didn't want it to, I didn't know where it could branch off to, but I didn't like that. I didn't like that feeling.
Well, and the question becomes why? What interrupted your sleep? And what brain state were you in? What stage of sleep were you in? Because there's non-REM parasomnias and there are REM parasomnias.
Okay.
And so
I think I was probably non.
Yeah.
Not, but
yeah, it's likely. Like, you know, for example, a night terror. Someone can have a night terror and they completely forget it. That's a REM parasomnia. They can have a nightmare. They remember the whole thing. It's non-REM parasomnia.
Oh, okay? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Well, yeah, that's particular. It's just different states when you're having it. But say you're in your REM sleep and you have an apnea event. Okay. It wakes you up partially. So your brain is still asleep, but your body's not paralyzed anymore. So now you're acting out your dreams on your wake state. Okay? And so, you know, like I always like to look at this, like Western medicine.
That's when you would move. Probably.
You would move. So you have something called RBD, which is REM behavioral disorder. You can kick and punch in your sleep. Okay. Now, that is super important to get evaluated because it has been connected to potentially developing an early sign of Parkinson's in your future.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
However, it could just be people have sleep apnea in their REM sleep and they're dissociated between REM and wake.
Right.
Okay. So we don't want to jump to conclusions, but yeah.
It needs to be studied.
It needs to be looked at. Yeah. And then also, if it's super dangerous to have a parasomnia. You can, it's funny, or, you know, I see them walk around, or kids typically grow out of it. But if adults are doing that, I'm telling you, you have to lock up your weapons. I'm serious. I'm serious. I mean, there's been legal cases about this. Someone's gotten hurt or murdered, but the person was asleep.
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine? Wow. So, you know, you have to lock up all the weapons and everything. But it's also something to understand there's probably an underlying sleep disorder that's triggering it. And there may not be, and it just may just be this phenomenon. In some instances, it could be fine, you know? Right. But we always want to make sure the person's safe.
And then you lock yourself in your room.
Yeah, I mean,
but something to where, that's interesting. That's very, very important that you said that. So what are some effective coping mechanisms or therapies for someone who experiences kind of anxiety or racing thoughts before bed? We touched on it a little bit, but I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive because anxiety or racing thoughts before bed is most likely going to delay your sleep time. And here's what a lot of people do, because here's what I used to do. I don't do this anymore. What I would do before, I know you're going to say it's the worst thing you could do. I would pick up my iPad and I would start scrolling. I'd be like, well, you know what? I don't feel as tired as I'd like to. I'm going to sit on the iPad till I get tired. And then an hour and a half later, you know, there you are on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Right. And
you still up.
Yeah, watching recipes that you're never going to cook. And, you know.
No, I mean, I think, first of all, sleep has changed with the dawn of like portable electronics that emit light, exactly, and that have information that's flashing before you super fast. That has become the practice. You understand that has become the ritual that most people have, and that has to be challenged. And at least we need to find a way to use technology properly, appropriately to help people sleep, and actually tap into your own. I mean, you have the ability to go to sleep and dream.
You do,
and you're having all this information. You know, it's like your internal iPad. All these things are being reviewed, and it's unlimited. But instead, we're connecting to these devices instead of connecting within ourselves.
And every now and then, I've tapped into my and just kind of made my body,
you
know, go to sleep.
And that's what it is.
But it's rare. Like, it'll have to be like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to grab my iPad. I need to get up to go to that school talk in the morning.
Right.
So I just call it like I force myself to sleep. I don't know how it works.
Yes.
But it's like I just force myself to sleep.
So the point that has to be made first is that should you connect to something external or something internal? What is the value of what you're doing at night? That hour and a half of scrolling, what do people feel that they're getting out of that? What are they missing? The second thing is now you have something internally. What are you scared of?
True.
You know, now that's the thing. There are some things internal for some people that are scary.
True.
They need to unpack that.
Right.
Because there's this vulnerability, and I've had with patients where they go to sleep and those thoughts of trauma start to come back, and they're trying to relax because they're blocking it all day. And now it's quiet. There's no noise. There's nobody around. And it starts to creep its head up. You know, you haven't dealt with me yet. Remember what happened. or this person you have a problem with or whatever, it creeps back up so that they need something to distract them from that.
So could that potentially be also when you look at some of the roles that anxiety and racing thoughts have before sleep?
Yes.
It's like you're relaxing and those thoughts are so dealing with those.
Yes.
Could
And that's they're kind of like, I would say two categories I see. There's the trauma that has happened, and there's the worry about the trauma that could happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Never happened.
Right.
It hasn't happened yet. Never happened. Probably won't
not
happen.
living in the present.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Because there's no problem right now.
True.
You know, you're safe. You're in your bed. You're relaxed. You know?
True.
But so, in the past trauma, we got to clean that up. You know, and there's work to be done. And actually, sleep helps you work through that. It's an automatic, involuntary process of healing mentally, past trauma included. Because if you ask someone who's been through trauma, the first thing they say, the first thing gets messed up is their sleep. The same day they experience trauma, they don't sleep, and they may not ever sleep the same.
Right.
Okay. Right. For those who are worriers and who have that anxiety, it's fear driven typically,
right? And
it's fear of failure or fear that something bad's going to happen. That's what they're worried about. So that time when they're not actively doing something, they think that they want to control the outcome. They want to do something, and that brain starts running those racing thoughts about tomorrow, about the person who's going to be there, about how they're going to do it, how's it going to go, all those thoughts. Instead of tapping into their ability and saying, you know what, I'm good, I'm ready. I've done everything. We're here. Yeah. Everything's going to go well. The positive thoughts. And you have to tap into that and program that and understand your sleep is going to help you achieve your goal.
Right.
You know,
don't mess that part
it's
up.
going to prepare you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a practice.
So, okay. So, I mean, there's so much in your wealth of knowledge and you know so much about this, but where can people go to find out more information? I know you actually, obviously, with your practice and everything, you help people one-on-one and try to figure out problems and help them better to sleep. Where can people go to find out more information about you and sleep?
Yes, you can go to thesleepmd.com, or you can also go to biorhythms.com, and you can find out more information about myself and our work and how we help people heal through sleep.
Awesome. Thank you very much
My
again.
pleasure.
All right.
Yes, sir.
If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can check out our past archive of episodes on kfoxtv.com or listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for breaking it down with me, and we'll see you next time here on The Breakdown.